Well, a very good morning, good evening, good afternoon to you, wherever you might be in the world. Welcome to the channel. If you're new to the channel, I'm Anna. Obviously, this is my channel. I share information with you. Hopefully, it's information that supports you to live the life that obviously you desire. Bit trite, that old saying. If you're a returning visitor, once again, thank you very much for your ongoing support. Now, just a reminder for people, and if you're new, I do go down the rabbit warren every now and again. That means I go off on a tangent. I do have scripts, but this is not an AI generated recording type video. This is just me having a chat. That's what yarning is on a Sunday. So anyway, excuse me as I swallow. Bottom line is, I invite you to share your experiences, to respond to any of the comments that I put up. You may have more information. I am a great believer that the more we share information, the more we pull together and we get some unity, we get some understanding, and we grow ourselves. So today I will be talking about hopefully something that can grow ourselves, is the experience that many of us deal with at different times in our lives. If not full blown, at least to a level. I'm going to be talking about anxiety today because it's a theme that's been coming up for me in the last week or so. Not only for myself, I've actually met other people that are really having full blown anxiety at the moment. I've just had a couple of stresses. There's a saying that, a certain amount of anxiety is actually healthy because it motivates us and inspires us to actually stay on track and achieve our goals. But when we have too much anxiety, our entire system can become overwhelmed. Well, So my stresses are really quite minimal in the face of things. At the end of the day, I've been speaking about this event. We're having our first one, or I'm having my first gathering on Wednesday this week. So I've been trying to be prepared for it. And it's not like it hasn't been without its challenges, okay? They're just fairly minimal. It's, like life comes together very nicely in some ways, and in other ways it's kind of unpredictable. So for instance, because this is my first one, I wanted to do a really nice thing, have everything pretty for people, the appearance factor, to create an ambience, if that's how you pronounce the word, when people come along. And so I was ordering things like coffee cups. Well, some arrived smashed up, some they couldn't fulfill the order, things like that, just the trivial ones. So now, last minute, I'm going to have to try and get some paper cups, which is not my preferred option. I was trying to actually be a little bit environmentally responsible and look for sustainability as well, such as life. It goes on. So then there has just been, what can I say, just minimal stuff, just lots of little things, and I'll talk about them as we go through, because the idea, of course, is when we're talking about anxiety, that is when the stress levels seem to accumulate. So to prevent anxiety, we've got to manage these stresses, keep a cap on them, and work with what we can do, and just go with the flow with the things that we can't, just work around them, I guess. And that's what I'm trying to do with the event. It is coming together, though, I must say. It's going to be a good night. So I did say that my motivations for talking about anxiety this week is because I have bumped into so many people this week in the course of my own interactions who are starting to now experience heightened anxiety. And when we talk about anxiety, of course, this can impact very negatively on a person's capacity to function. And I think it's helpful if I share some information that I know based on my mental health training. So I know some people that are new to the channel won't be aware that I actually have a Bachelor of Social Work, and I have worked in the mental health setting around a lot of people with anxiety, and I've learned a lot of strategies and tips and information that I can share with people. That's certainly part of the motivation. Of course, metaphysical is a different aspect, but anyway, it's not just about the experience for the person who has anxiety. When we are working with people who have got anxiety, such as colleagues, we can be unrealistic of our expectations of how those people perform. And, no offense to people that suffer from anxiety here, it can be very frustrating if they are triggered and it impacts on their functionality. So that's just part of it. The other thing is too, they might not be colleagues, they might be family members. And sometimes a little bit of information goes a long way to helping those people to work through and manage their anxiety symptoms to prevent the full-blown anxiety, shall we say, episodes. I don't like to use the word attack. To me, it's not really an appropriate word when we talk about anxiety, because anxiety doesn't really come in and attack a person by the throat. It seems to creep in with the compilation of stresses that we get. I know, for example, though, you've got to have a bit of a laugh. One of the people that have motivated me to talk about anxiety is actually a mature age student. She's back at uni and she's really struggling, but we'll talk about that in a little while. I am of the viewpoint that if you're going to university, because I did mature age study as well, it's like if you didn't have anxiety before you start, the chances are you'll probably develop it along the way. And it's not always it's not always because you're doing something wrong or whatever. I found the most challenging aspects of university study was actually the group work and the teamwork. And this is because you've got different people, different ages, different expectations. And with group work, they allocate tasks to people, and we've usually got a deadline to compete with. And this is the same really for a lot of work situations. And everybody takes a different approach to their tasks. Some people are quite responsible with it. When you've got somebody such as myself who was in their 50s and you've got a 19-year-old student and you're relying on them to actually step up to the plate and do their contribution, it was an endless sense of frustration for me that the 19-year-old will go, I know, I'm sorry I didn't do what I was meant to do. I'm sorry that I haven't done what I said I was going to do for the last 5 weeks. I'm sorry that the assessment's due in 2 days' time and I haven't done what I was meant to do, but I'll do it tonight. And then when you're sort of looking at them thinking, oh my goodness me, and then they go, well, what was I supposed to say? I got invited to a lot of birthday parties this week and I can't say no to my friends, can I? And you think, oh, okay, all right. But you've just got to somehow get through it. Anyway, that's an example of me running down the rabbit warren and digressing. Back to subject. We're talking about anxiety. It's not always that there is something going on in a person's head. It's generally how they cope with the external influences a lot of the time. I think probably the most important thing for anybody to know is if somebody's got anxiety, it's not just about, oh, it's all in your head. It's your negative mind chatter. It's your negative script. It's your attitude. It's your attitude that gives you this anxiety, okay? To some extent, yes, all of that is important and it does play a factor. But things like anxiety are more than just being a case of it's in your head. There is scientific evidence, research that proves that what we think actually cements neural pathways. So yes, it's in our head, but they are reflexive, physiological responses, and it can be a thought, a reactive thought that goes straight to the brainstem, this fear-based reactions. But that's because the pathways have been cemented. And yes, we can change them, but it does take time and effort. So the other thing is as well, if you're working with somebody that has got, say, a diagnosis of anxiety, or somebody in your family and they have an anxiety episode and you're there with them and you see that they become very anxious and stressed out. For example, the lady that I was talking to said that she gets so anxious and then she's got to go to bed. We'll talk about that in a moment. Excuse me as I swallow. But there's more than just the physiological neural pathway stuff. There is a whole range of physical reactions that occur when a person has severe anxiety. And the most minimal ones, I guess, is if you're aware of it, if you suffer from anxiety yourself, the first thing you're going to notice, but tend not to notice as we're learning to manage, these are the ones that people miss, okay? But the first symptoms are actually muscular tension. You start to feel tense in your muscles. And this is why people are encouraged to pay aware awareness, to be consciously aware of what's going on with their bodies. And this is why mindfulness is so important. So there is that recognition, okay, there is a muscular change, there is a certain muscular tension there that needs to be released. Before you can release it, it's usually finding out what's going on, what's causing this tension, to manage it. Okay, most people can manage that tension. They put it into perspective, they realize what's causing it. Okay, they're overloaded at work, or they've got too many family demands on them. They just need to relax and work through it. Okay. For other people, it might go from being this muscular tension to, there's a whole range of symptoms. It can be rapid speech, it can be stuttering, they might struggle to speak. It can be actually they're over vocalizing, that they talk too loudly, they talk too much, they talk too fast. All of these kind of things are symptoms of anxiety when it's starting to getting close to peaking, I would say. Worst case scenarios is when conversations become compromised, and that is where the communication can be very direct. Sometimes, well, we should say sometimes, quite often people with anxiety can be perceived as being abrupt or unfiltered at best. And at worst, they can be perceived by others to be aggressive or argumentative. So if we don't manage to regulate our anxiety and tension, we can really compromise our relationships, not just our function. Okay, there's something to, I think I've got it on the next slide. No, I haven't. So I'll just talk about it here. Okay, so when we talk about the anxiety escalating and all these physiological reactions, what I haven't put in there is that the brain can start to be overwhelmed because it's got too much information coming through. And it's kind of like the brain stops processing information. It can become a real sort of halt, stop in your tracks kind of thing. So the idea is that we have to be able to get back online. So for some people who have watched the other videos I've put up of, neural pathways and this kind of thing, it's about getting that fear, right, to get back into the frontal lobe of your brain. Because when we have a fear-based reaction, we're said to be thinking from the space of the brain stem, where we're just caught up in that emotional reaction. But when we're functioning in a healthy way, we're actually operating from the frontal lobe, which is the forehead area. So, for example, my friend who is at university, who is struggling, she is watching the lectures. I'll just give you an example. She's watching the university lectures. She doesn't go to university. She does online because she can't cope in social situations. It triggers her anxiety. So she watches from home. Now, what is happening for her is her learning is becoming compromised because I think she's putting a lot of pressure on herself, actually, because she wants to actually study. But she said that she can't even watch a whole video at the moment. So I gave her some suggestions on how to manage it, which is basically, look, if you've got a task to complete, the problem is when you're stuck in that brainstem business, that you can't actually absorb and retain information. So it becomes a case of just writing down your tasks. For her, with the lectures, it's not going to be relevant to everybody, but perhaps this rationale that I'm giving to you, you can apply to your own situation. But basically, write down the task that she's got to do. And if her brain doesn't allow her to actually complete each task at one time, because this is where it's kind of like the wiring just goes crazy in the brain when they're in these anxiety episodes. I said to her, look, just write down the notes to each video. And if you've got to take a breather and step back, then step back from it, have a couple of breaths, literally. You might even need to give yourself a 10-minute break. But before you walk away from the computer, right where you're at the video. So if it's an hour-long video, you just write the time frame on there so that you can come back and pick up where you left off. Because when a person is stuck in this anxiety type stuff, they actually don't necessarily think logically or rationally. So quite typically, a person with anxiety might start to watch a lecture have to stop, go away, and then come back and start from the beginning again. And they might have to do that about 6 times. But the problem is they don't need to start from the beginning if they've made their notes. And they will save themselves a lot of time and pressure if they just write down, pick the video up here and start back on their notes from where they left off. And then at the end of it, if need be, they can just go and review the notes, and that helps them to get where they're trying to go. The point being, though, for those people that don't suffer from anxiety, hopefully what you're hearing here is that if somebody's got severe anxiety, it does impact on the function. And while they learn to manage it, and even once they've managed it, it can cause delays. It can take longer to process information because it's like this brain is in fright mode all the time. So just quickly, I'll run through some other suggestions I made to her, which is about being organised. She's identified as being a real procrastinator and very disorganised. And what I learned going to university, mainly for stress reduction at the time, because obviously mother, grandmother, family responsibilities. I was also working full-time when I first started uni. I don't know what I was thinking, but I chose to enrol for a full-time uni study while working full-time and while having family commitments. But what I found was that to be organised and be realistic with my expectations of myself was very helpful. It helped me to stay on track, okay? That meant I might need to give myself extra time to achieve certain tasks and to allow for the fact that I may actually, this extra time was beneficial because I would kind of put in a window there for the fact that my family responsibilities may interrupt me. And so I would just allow myself extra time. If they turned around and said that I needed 10 hours per unit, I would probably give myself 12 when I was managing my time and setting up my study schedule. The other thing is to be aware of triggers, to be aware of what is going to create a really big emotional response and basically throw a person into the brainstem. I've just got a note here that I think is worth mentioning, because part of my managing anxiety is quite often I won't be aware of the muscle tension, but I will be aware, because I tend to put my feet up when I sit down, I will be aware of my feet. I will see my toe tapping, and that's one of the first things that shows me that I'm starting to get a bit anxious about things. And if my sleep is disturbed and I start to struggle from insomnia, then it's actually time for me to really get control of it before it runs away with me. Now, the other thing too is another beneficial tip that I gave to the lady is boundaries. Be very clear, outline them clearly, be aware of what your own needs are, and let other people know, because if you're not clear with your boundaries and other people cross them, then it can create a reaction, and then it creates that response of beating yourself up for an overreaction where a person didn't even know what they were doing, but you've gone off your dial at them. Okay, so next tip is avoid procrastinating. If you delay things and put them off and you go, I'll do that later, it just turns a molehill into a mountain. And this is one of the reasons why I suggested to her, look, just instead of not doing it and just going, that all looks too hard, chip away at it, do a little bit at a time. But at the same time, don't force yourself, because if the brain's in that brain strain, I've got a headache type space, then the reality is if you keep pushing and forcing, I think it just puts too much pressure on it. And it, I don't know, I think it's like, what's that saying? Pushing something uphill. It's an uphill battle. So you don't try and force it. You give it a go. Pay attention to your body. Now, the other thing before it gets really bad is box breathing. I've got videos up about that as well. Do some breathing activities. Put the focus on your breath. If need be, if you've got to step away from the computer or the situation that you're in, walk outside and do recentering, center and ground, preferably barefoot if it's not inclement weather. These are all part of preventing, okay, or managing the symptoms before they get too high. Now, I'm going to talk about what my friend said to me is how she's managing it, which is not necessarily a healthy way of managing anxiety. So it is healthy and it isn't healthy. And this is what I explained to her, because what she's doing is she is getting so overwhelmed by her tasks and stressing out, becoming so anxious about it. what she said was she just has to go to bed and have a sleep, and then she spends all day in bed sleeping. So that's the bit that I say is unhealthy, okay? A sleep actually is brilliant if your anxiety goes through the roof. But to put this into perspective, okay, to explain to you, and this is what I did with her, is that when we sleep, if your anxiety goes through the roof, we've got the old anxiety meter. If you're in the red, the best way to actually get back down into the green and back to the base level of comfort is actually through a rest, through having a sleep. Or meditation's very good for it as well. But sleep is probably the best one. But the thing is, if you're sleeping all day, then you become basically at risk of compounding it because you're not actually achieving the task. That's your function totally interrupted. So what I said to her was, look, just let go of the guilt about having a sleep. If you feel that you need to have a sleep, you go and have a sleep. But instead of staying in bed all day, maybe set your alarm, give yourself 1 or 2 hours, and that'll be a power nap. In fact, 1 hour is better for a power nap. Once they get up, their body has reset, all those physiological symptoms have kind of subsided, the brain has rested, and it's now ready to kick off again. And then basically, once she has had that power nap, then come in and do that 10 minutes at a time if need be. And what generally happens is once a person starts pushing in for that 10 minutes, before they know it, half an hour is gone and they've actually achieved some of the goals that they were aiming to achieve, and that reinforces positive self-image and that kind of thing. Especially if there's a list there and you can actually tick and cross things off. You look at that and you think, wow, I had an anxiety episode, but hey, I've still managed to do my task, which is why it's so good. Now, this is the bit that I think is really, really important for everybody to understand. And this is the person with anxiety and all those people around them, okay? If they have got to, for example, the lady that I'm talking about where she has peaked out, she's hit the red in the anxiety. Once they've got to that stage, they don't suddenly recover overnight and get back to their original state and regain their original function. This is because once it's peaked, there is a whole range of physiological symptoms that still have to be recovered from. So even if they're now, if I was to put it, I've got an example here. This is a hypothetical, okay, because this one she hasn't shared with me yet, but the reality is, so let's use the exam and study scenario, okay? Her anxiety is peaking, she's pushing through, she gets through to the exam stage, she worries about the exam, she thinks she's going to fail, she goes in there, she does the exam's over and done with, but she's still going to stress about it, all right? She's still going to stress that she's probably failed because she's going to see all of the errors of judgment that she made in a study, or, you know, all the things that she could have done better before it happened. So she's going to continue to stress for a little while there until she actually gets the results, right? When I say stress, be anxious, okay? Stress is what most of us have. People with anxiety, they have anxiety. It's stress plus. But anyway, so let's say she gets the exam results come in and she's actually passed. To her surprise, she has passed, and she's got a high distinction or something like that. She will likely still not be recovered from that anxiety for the simple fact that throughout the anxious period, all of that muscle tension and everything else, perhaps the insomnia, broken sleep, all of that stuff is going to impact on her body. So even though she's got her high grades, in the best case scenarios, this is based on my knowledge, understanding and experience. Of course, you may have a different concept and I welcome and invite. But I would say even under the best circumstances, she's probably going to have muscle pain, because a lot of the time people with anxiety, with this muscle tension, they don't realise they are so tense and tightly wired until after it's all relaxed, okay? And it's like having done some kind of physical endurance running or whatever. There's the aching body that is still got to get over it. And if insomnia was part of it, there's fatigue and exhaustion as well. So it takes a little while to get back to it, or to get back to that original state of good health. Now, if you're a caregiver or a loved one of somebody with anxiety, just my recommendation here would just be aware of it. And by being aware of it, I mean just be aware that they're still operating from a space of limitation. And that doesn't mean to say that you don't encourage or prompt them to perhaps get out of bed and do a few activities or whatever. It just means go gently. Go gently, because they need to be going gently with themselves as well, because they are still recovering, and we don't want to compound it at that point in time. They may still be a bit oversensitive, and they may be a little bit reactive if they feel that you're pushing too hard. So that's where, when we talk about having open communication between caregivers and people with a disorder, is you actually ask them, what would you like me to do to support you here? Do you want me, and in fact, if their communication is compromised, they might just turn around and say, I want you to back off. And you go, well, okay then, well, let me know when I can actually encourage you. Or if you actually are reliant on them to step up to the plate and do a few things, you can turn around and say, well, that's fine, but at the back of your mind, can you please include that I would actually like some help with? And just say it nicely, without pressure. Let me know when is a good time. Have a think about it, but don't stress about it. We'll work it out. So no pressure, but gentle encouragement. So, shifting on from anxiety and stress management, have you noticed, if you're a returning visitor, I've actually changed the name of this slide. I'm calling it Crystal Magic Update instead of Playlist Update. And this is because I'm quite invested in many ways into crystals at the moment. I've been spending money, good Lord, more money than I need to be spending. But this is actually because of, me doing these. I've got a valid reasons. I can justify it. This is because I'm doing the Crystal Magic playlist, and I need to have these crystals. Oh, anyway, this has been full of stress as well. Obviously, I've said to people when I check the videos, if you're going to be buying from overseas, it's so high risk in so many different ways. And I'm finding out the hard way myself just what those risks are and what some of those stresses are. And it's not just about ensuring that you're actually buying a legitimate product from a legitimate seller, somebody who's not trying to rip you off or a scammer. There's also the issues with freight, and freight costs are exorbitant. But then what I've been dealing with this week is that I actually have had my selenite parcel go missing. Now, if you've watched most of my videos, you'll know that I absolutely love selenite as a cleanser, purifier, charger of my crystals. And this is just really important to me. So anyway, it's kind of lost in transit at the moment. I'm trying to find it. And the thing is that if you know or have listened to why I love selenite, it's because it's easy and it's quick. You get your selenite out and you just put your crystals on it and you leave the universe to take care of it. Very low key, low effort, low time. But the problem is I'm buying all these different crystals and I plan to take them along to my community event. And guess what? I have to do them the long and harder way because I don't have my selenite. Oh, well, such is life. You win some, you lose some. I still want to buy some charoite. I have not done it, but I have been buying other things. Let's kick on. I'll talk to you about one. Oh, I've actually ordered today one of my favourite ones. It's a new one for me. It's one that I actually really quite love, and I'm going to be doing the video for this one this week, so I'll tell you when I get to that slide. However, as far as playlist updates go, obviously you will have seen Healersgold go up. This is one of my favourite crystals as well. It's not the one that I was going to be talking about, but there's something delectable about Healersgold. So anyway, that one's been published last week. You can access it on the Crystal Magic playlist. Sodalite has also been published. Now, I'm going to put my hand up and say, you know what? I had forgotten what a brilliant crystal, how diverse it was, how many benefits that it's got. I had forgotten all of that until I did the video. So the bottom line is I actually now have started wearing my Sodalite. I don't know why I put it off for so long, but yes, I'm definitely back to wearing Sodalite. But that video you can access now as well because it's public. Speaking of procrastination, as I have done in the previous videos, I've been working on Chiastolite and I haven't actually finished it, but I will have it finished and I plan to load this one on Tuesday. This is another really interesting crystal. I was actually gifted some many years ago by a prospector, so I've always loved this particular crystal and I hope you will too. This is the one. This is the one that I was warning you about a little bit earlier. It's called Golden Healer Quartz. So we're looking, obviously, with the video last week on Healersgold, I wanted to put this one up because it gets confused because of the name with Healersgold as well. But as you can see, they're two totally different crystals, both beautiful, beautiful. But either way, I haven't started on this particular video yet. I will do though. I have got here, I bought some flames. I wanted to actually see it myself, which is the carved type crystal. So I've got a couple of those, but I actually have found a supplier overseas where I can buy tumbled from. So I've actually put in an order today because I really like this one and I think most people will. It's just look at it. It's just beautiful is all I can say. So in the meantime, we are done for today, but well, just about. But before I go, I just want to remind people that we do have these different playlists. If you do suffer from anxiety or any of these other conditions, I've got the evidence-based playlist, which is the health and wellbeing, the self-help ones. Have a look on those and Google things like neuroscience, anxiety, things like that in the actual channel, and you'll find the videos that I've created. You will also find ones on breathing and breath work, and I've tried to deliver the ones on this channel basically not from a metaphysical viewpoint, but from the professional viewpoint. And that's part of my professional responsibility, I guess. Having been trained in the mainstream, I've got to be very clear and defined. This goes back to the boundaries about what science says and what it doesn't say. So anything that's metaphysical, like the crystals, has no evidence base to it. That's considered to be belief. I mean, many of us will actually believe that there is anecdotal information to support our beliefs. However, we would not be able to substantiate it through, I think they call it, through rigorous testing. Okay, that's apparently what is applied to academic work, and of course we could all debate that. But anyway, I have got two distinct types of channels or approaches to the content that I put up. So some of it is the evidence-based stuff that's in the self-help and the health and wellbeing channels, or playlists rather, and the rest of it is of course metaphysical and will be my opinion based on my experiences or conversations with other people. But anyway, knock yourself out, have fun with them. And for now, I'm going to say love you, leave you. Thank you very much for being part of my journey. Have a wonderful week, blessed day, whatever's left of it, or blessed tomorrow. Feel free to say g'day. Let me know where you're from and let me know if you've actually used any of these crystals that I put up. I'd love to hear your feedback on that as well. Anyway, for now, take care. Catch you later. Bye-bye.